You might have been flipping through your feed recently and saw a headline that felt like a glitch in the matrix, that Stephen Colbert and Jimmy Kimmel walked away from CBS and ABC to launch an uncensored news program called The Voice of Truth. This viral story claimed that these comedy giants were joining forces to bypass corporate filters and tell the real story about what's happening in America. And of course, this was a hoax. And it was a coordinated campaign of AI-generated misinformation that tricked millions into believing that the late night landscape had shifted. The story is your typical story of social media deception. The hoax relied on AI slop. Tons of AI-generated articles and social media posts designed to farm clicks and make money. Scammers used deepfake technology to create pictures and created insider reports claiming that Kimmel had lit a fuse that no network dared to touch and that Colbert poured the gasoline. By piggybacking this story on real-world news like Kimmel's suspension or the Colbert Show's cancellation, the creators of this hoax made this lie feel plausible enough to go viral on platforms like Facebook and TikTok, despite it not being real. We're going to peel back the layers of this bizarre digital hoax and see how it's a warning about how easily our reality can be distorted by AI and social media. Let's get spooky. The Voice of Truth late-night television hoax reached a fever pitch in February 2026. And it was more than just your typical false rumor. It exploited the authority of these legendary late-night entertainment figures. And it used the public fascination with high-stakes legal scandals, specifically the Epstein scandals, and how vulnerable we are to social media's algorithmically driven attention economy. On February 24, 2026, a series of posts began to flood social media platforms, most likely originating on Facebook. These posts had an urgent claim that 6 of the most prominent late-night icons in American television, including Stephen Colbert and Jimmy Kimmel, were launching an independent underground channel called The Voice of Truth. The story was told like it was a revolutionary act of journalistic defiance, suggesting that these hosts had finally broken their silence to deliver information that the corporate media had suppressed. The lore behind the Voice of Truth launch was tailored to our modern day reality to make it seem true. They really wanted to play up the rogue journalist aspect or the rogue broadcast aspect of this hoax. The post said that there had been no teaser campaigns, no marketing rollouts, and no press releases. Instead, the channel simply surfaced out of thin air, compelling the United States to pause and pay attention. Of course, it helps that the lack of these things being promoted was shown to be proof of the existence and done on purpose and not just proof that this show doesn't exist. They made it seem as if they'd done this as if this were a tactical move to evade censorship. The claim about the premiere was that it focused on the late Virginia Giuffre, whose name you might recognize from the Jeffrey Epstein investigations, and that this single episode had drawn a staggering 1.3 billion views within hours of its release. Now, 1.3 billion views is a massive number, and it makes no sense within the context of American media. 1.3 billion is more than 4 times the entire population of the United States and nearly 16% of the global population. The idea that a phantom channel could capture the attention of roughly a quarter of the world's internet users without a single marketing dollar is incredible. The 1.3 billion figure has a psychological purpose. It bypasses your critical thinking by overwhelming the reader with this idea that there is this incredible universal consensus. If 1.3 billion people had seen it, the reader feels like they're late, that they had missed something, which discourages looking at this with a critical and skeptical eye in order to immediately engage the post. As a side note, the figure 1.3 often appears in misinformation. Like there's often claims that something costs $1.3 trillion in government spending. So it's almost as if the number 1.3 is a term that is recycled in fake news to trigger some sort of emotional response. The Voice of Truth hoax relied on a collage of images to promote its claim. The primary images used were a portrait of Virginia Giuffre, a group photo of several late-night hosts and correspondents, and a photo of Jeffrey Epstein with Donald Trump. The photo of all of the hosts together is interesting because it is an unedited image. but it's taken completely out of context. It was a photograph taken in 2017. The photograph is a moment when Stephen Colbert hosted a reunion of the former Daily Show correspondents on CBS's The Late Show. And this is called anchoring. And it's a classic disinformation tactic. By using this photo, the creators of the hoax gave an air of legitimacy to the fake story. A main component of the Voice of Truth lore is its focus on Virginia Giuffre. Giuffre is an advocate and survivor of Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking ring, and she had been the subject of many investigations and documentaries, including the Lifetime series called Surviving Jeffrey Epstein, as well as her book, Nobody's Girl. Virginia Giuffre passed away in 2025. The Voice of Truth was framed as the only platform brave enough to reveal the truth behind her death and her testimony against figures like Prince Andrew. The idea is to turn the story into a moral crusade, making the act of sharing the post to feel like an act of justice for the victim against the establishment. Now, the Voice of Truth was not the first time these two hosts were claimed to be in some sort of rebellion story that went viral online. In September 2025, a nearly identical rumor circulated claiming that Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert had teamed up with Simon Cowell, of all people, to launch a channel called Truth News. This 2025 version was almost like a beta test for the 2026 version. It used a similar claim of an uncensored news channel and used AI-generated images of Cowell and the hosts in a secret studio. Fact checkers at the time identified the source as a network of ad-filled blogs that used sensationalist headlines to drive traffic, or basically when you go, what you find when you Google pretty much anything nowadays. The change from Truth News to Voice of Truth in 2026 involved expanding the cast of hosts and incorporating Virginia Giuffre to increase the outrage factor. The name Voice of Truth has a heavy weight to, and it's also been used in international disinformation. In 2019, Facebook removed a network of pages targeting Ukraine that centered around a website meaning Voice of Truth in Ukrainian. This was linked to pro-Kremlin interests and used fictitious personas to impersonate deceased Ukrainian journalists. Facebook labeled this as coordinated inauthentic behavior. The Ukrainian Voice of Truth focused on the framing of the 2014 Maidan Revolution as a coup d'etat and spreading conspiracy theories about the Ukrainian government. It was linked to the hacker group Cyber Burkut and utilized a mix of real events and fabricated narratives to create a flood of imposters that drowned out factual reporting. Note the cynical use of the term truth here. It's a shield that makes any contradiction of whatever they claim appear to be censorship. The Voice of Truth hoax is an example of what's been termed Glurge. Glurge is considered stories that are sent by email or social media that are supposed to be true and uplifting, but are completely fake. What they're supposed to do, they're supposed to be sentimental and let your emotions sort of take away your critical thinking. The writing is characterized by sweeping, emotionally charged language that prioritizes the feeling of a revelation over, reality. The phrase Voice of Truth also taps into religious and cultural associations. A lot of people noted that the name is shared by the Voice of Truth Bible Church and various Christian ministries. These organizations use this phrase Voice of Truth to refer to the Word of God as a guiding light. The religious resonance is supposed to add a layer of spiritual legitimacy to this hoax. For many believers, the idea of a final judgment or a day of reckoning for figures like Jeffrey Epstein is a core tenet of their worldview. By framing the Colbert-Kimmel Voice of Truth hoax as a mechanism for exposing evil, the hoax creators effectively rewrote history in a way that aligned with existing religious sentiments, making their story even more difficult for some people to dismiss. The Voice of Truth hoax is an example of a future where the truth is increasingly becoming something that is, not true, and is instead manipulation. The disturbing part of all this is we live in a time where the news has been replaced by the infinite scroll. For millions, catching up on the world no longer involves turning on ABC News or reading a newspaper. It means opening our cell phone and opening an app. This access to instant information has created a disturbing reality. The social media platforms that we rely on to stay informed are polluted. They're flooded with unverified rumors and a growing tsunami of AI-generated slop. The amount of people who rely on social media for news is horrifying. More than half of adults get their news from social media at least sometimes. And when you look at the particular platforms, it's even worse. 38% of Americans regularly get their news from Facebook, and 20% rely on Instagram for regular news updates. These are platforms that were designed for sharing vacation photos and life updates, not for vetting important news information. Yet, for a massive part of the population, these algorithms, Meta's algorithms, are the editors of people's daily reality. It's dangerous how much the sheer volume of unverified information now dominates these feeds. The algorithms powering Facebook and Instagram don't care about journalistic integrity or factual accuracy. They care about keeping your eyes on the screen. Bad actors, bot networks, and profit-driven click farmers can now flood Facebook and Instagram with synthetic outrage in a matter of seconds. And users mindlessly scroll on their lunch breaks, absorbing this information. This is creating an incredible amount of psychological and societal damage. When people consume their news primarily through Facebook, Instagram, and other social media algorithms, they're living in a customized echo chamber designed to conform to their existing biases. It's to keep them agitated, to keep them scrolling. Extreme polarizing content is rewarded by the algorithm. And so much of this information originates from anonymous meme pages. So there's no accountability or fact checking. A fabricated AI image or a completely made up news story can rack up millions of views and shape public opinion before a single fact checker has a chance to comment on it. We have arrived in a terrifying crisis where our shared objective reality has collapsed. When the majority of the public gets their information from social media platforms overflowing with this style of fake AI-driven news stories, the very concept of truth begins to erode. We are dealing with a time where fabricated stories are becoming indistinguishable from authentic news reporting. People don't know what is real anymore. And we can't agree on basic foundational facts. And that is a very scary place to be. It shows that an effective hoax no longer requires any sort of equipment or money. Instead, all it needs is a sophisticated AI model and a network of bot-driven social media pages and a narrative that aligns with the audience's pre-existing desires and fears. As AI models continue to evolve, the noise of synthetic media will only grow. The lesson of the voice of truth is clear. The most dangerous falsehoods are those that present themselves as some sort of revelation. The Voice of Truth late night hoax was never about a television show. It was about the desire for a world where the power are finally held accountable by the voices we trust. And by putting together this story with the allure of this idea of people we trust going rogue to tell the truth, it created a phantom story that resonated with millions. It shows us that in our times, the voice of truth is often the one that speaks the loudest, even when it's not saying anything at all. It shows it's a responsibility of the reader to think critically against these floods of misinformation and to continue the hard work of reading, learning, thinking, and verifying so that the actual truth remains true. Please subscribe to this channel, The Spooky Lawyer. Please like and share this video. If you'd like to support the channel, you can become a member of this channel. I would appreciate you considering that. You also support me by continuing to watch, share, and like my videos. And I do appreciate you liking my videos. And please stay spooky.